you can clap and we can record and we'll just go for it. We spend way too much time arguing with people online or having mindless banter with friends. Sometimes it's good to just have a real conversation with someone who means well, has something interesting to say, and knows how to say it. That's what good faith is all about. I'm your host, Chris Peregin, and today we're speaking to Emma Hogg, a psychotherapist and lifestyle strategist focused on the science of joyfulness, wellness, and achievement. Thank you very much for accepting to join the Good Faith podcast.
Thank
Emma.
you for inviting me, Chris.
Very, very welcome. I've been following some of your work recently. You started a website, or maybe is it a movement? I don't know, A Life I Choose. Tell us a bit about that and how you got started and why you delved into this world.
Okay. I like the way you described it as a movement. At first, it started just as a blog. You know, like I always had this like yearning to start a blog. And at first, you know, I wasn't sure what I wanted to write about. First, I started a blog that had to do with food, and I got bored. And then eventually, you know, it just became really, really clear. Like, I mean, I was always interested in psychotherapy ever since I was, 14, 16 years old.
Why? What triggered that interest? As in, it's a strange thing to be interested in at 14, I guess, or?
Well, when I was 14, I started going to a therapist for the first time.
Okay.
And it really, really helped me a lot. And I understood so much about how mind and body and the link between them. And that when it's kind of like to be well and to be joyful and to be well in your relationships, you need to be well with yourself.
Okay.
And sometimes most of the time, to be well with yourself means to heal things within yourself.
And to take your sort of movement's name, to be able to choose the life you want to live rather than let life choose
just happen to
right?
you.
Or just
Exactly.
happen to you.
Exactly.
So that's your focus. How does it work? Do you give therapy to other people? Is it just a blog and YouTube channel?
So there's the blog and YouTube and hopefully a podcast soon as well. And my Instagram, which I'm on daily and stuff. But yes, I do offer, I offer a service called Lifestyle Strategy Sessions. And this is a combination of therapy and coaching. So it's very goal-directed in the sense that, you know, I always ask my clients, like, what do you want your life to be like? Like, what are the main challenges you're facing? Like, what's bothering you the most in all of your life? Like, what's happening? And if you had a magic wand, and this problem disappeared, what would your life be like? So then we identified the vision, you know, and to be able to work towards your vision, you need to have strategy. So that's where the coaching element comes in. But you also need to be healing and to be identifying limiting beliefs, cultural preconditioning, these kinds of things, you know, because you can have all the strategies in the world, but if you believe you're worthless, if you believe you're unworthy of love, you know, you're not going to fulfill the strategies. You're not going to take the steps.
And what are some of the sort of more common problems people come to you with today? Like, are there any that are, I don't know, unique to the time we're living in, you know? Are there any related to all this, like hyperconnectivity?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of tend to get two types of clients. And I get ones who are like super go-getters, like major high achievers. It's like one thing after another, and they don't know how to chill. So
and they're coming to you to go to the next level.
They're coming to me to go to the next level. Okay. And I help them get there for sure. But they also need to learn how to relax, enjoy the journey.
Like, are they trying to overachieve, for example, or?
I don't see it as overachieve. Like, I see them as high achievers. Okay. And I like that. Like, I mean, yes, go for it. Like, I don't think any goal you set is insane, you know? Well, depends. But for the most part.
Exactly. And the other type?
The other type of people who want to create something, but don't trust themselves. They don't sort of. There's anxiety. There's sort of things in the way. There's a lot of this sort of preconditioning, but that says, shh, stay quiet. You know, don't speak too loud. Don't show your voice. You know, so
more timid characters, for example.
So they are on the one hand the sort of the ones who are go. They need to learn how to. Okay, now we chill. Now we let go. Okay, so that then when you're on and you can go. And then there are the ones who need help getting started. You know.
Okay, so when. So you obviously have to like listen to them, understand what type of person they are, and kind of guide them both through your training and also through your experiences, I imagine. You know, you said you started going to therapy when you were 14 years old. What have you experienced in life, so to speak, that made you more sensitive to and empathetic to people who come to you with these things?
Oh my gosh.
A lot.
A big question. Well, there was the anorexia, right? Or to put a label on it. There were a few years where I just couldn't eat, but there were.
How old were you when that was?
It started when I was about 13.
Oh wow, okay.
There were certain traumatic experiences I had experienced in my younger years, in my childhood kind of thing. And then that sort of led to the anorexia, and I've also been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, so quite a few life experiences. My mother was unwell when I was very young, so there were quite a few things that made me, I suppose, sensitive.
And what kind of help did you get? As in, how did you find those tools within yourself? Was it like a long journey? Was it something that you met someone overnight and that changed your life? Like, how did you go from being someone who dealt with some level of trauma in your childhood to someone who helps other people fulfill their ambitions and joy?
It's been a journey, for sure. It's been a journey. I mean, when I started going to therapy at the age of 14, it was a lot of healing, I mean, I was fresh out of trauma, so it was like a lot of, my therapist did a lot of holding, a lot of sort of bringing the identity back together, because with trauma, there's a bit of a smash in the psyche kind of thing. So you need to kind of bring a lot of the identity back.
It's a question of rebuilding kind of thing.
Exactly. Remembering.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that you would do with a client, for example, trying to, I don't know, I'm just trying to imagine, I'm someone who's been through a deep trauma or something that's really, really knocking me down. Like, what's the starting point, in trying to rebuild that?
With trauma?
Yeah, for example.
Okay, so, well, with trauma, you can think about, trauma can be thought about in two ways. So trauma can either be an event that is completely unexpected. Okay, so it's an event that you have no preparation for. So the Twin Towers,
Okay.
That was something that nobody had any preparation for. It was just something that your psyche doesn't expect to see. It's not something normal, and it completely fucks with your mind. It's like this stuff happens. We are unsafe in this way, So it can either be like an event. And trauma can also be relational. So it sort of happens
over time.
Exactly, like in drip drops kind of thing. When, for example, a child grows up in a manipulative kind of relationship with the parent. That kind of thing.
So it kind of depends, right? On which of those types of trauma you've got. But I guess
Yeah.
you ultimately there's still an element of being just affected by that, right? And
Yes, and the thing is that on a brain level, what's happening with the person who has experienced trauma is that their fight or flight system. Okay, so the basal levels of the brain, the amygdala, the limbic system, the survival stem, are so in overdrive because they've learned to be on the alert because they had to be, that the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of our brains, doesn't get enough oxygen. So it just switches, it switches off for the most part. The CEO is what's responsible for regulating the body and the mind. So regulating emotions.
So how do you get control over that again?
It takes time. It takes time, and the most important element of the whole journey is safety.
Knowing that you're in safe hands.
Yes, so it's like from my end, it's really important to develop the trust with the client.
Okay.
And also to teach them how to bring safety to themselves on a physiological level.
Okay.
Because very often they'd be out of touch. They wouldn't even notice how to create safety for themselves.
So, for example, if they're in an abusive environment, they need to get out of the abusive environment, right?
For example, but that might take time. You can start from smaller things, because obviously it could be linked with other life issues, that it's not so easy to, and that could cause another trauma, right? Yeah. So when working with trauma, you can't jump straight into the trauma. It can't be like, okay, so let's talk about that night you were raped. Yeah. It can't be like that. It needs to be a lot about connecting, teaching them how to breathe. So that's because not very often, but when your brain is habitually in fight or flight, your chest is tight. Mm-hmm. So you're not breathing. And when you don't breathe, you can't get the oxygen to the prefrontal cortex. So a lot of it is teaching them how to breathe again. And then that sends the message to that area, like everything's okay.
Yeah.
You can relax. And then the nervous system responds. Yeah. And when the nervous system responds, then the body responds. So your muscles relax again. Mm-hmm. And slowly conditions like IBS, fibromyalgia, these sorts of things can be healed,
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about relationships as well. You're on your YouTube channel, you talk a lot about your husband, right?
Poor guy.
And just your relationship in general. And I think it's slightly sort of #couple goals, but it's also like, I think something that people don't really talk about enough, about their relationships and trying, and we all have these sort of similar experiences, but we all kind of need to learn from each other about them, right, as well. So I want to know, first of all, like, what's your story? Like, how did you find each other? And I know you had you were gonna get married before you met your current husband. So maybe you can talk to us a bit about that story as well.
Okay. So do you want me to start
Go
there?
For it. Yeah.
So I was in a relationship for 6 years with an American guy. And lovely guy, lovely relationship and everything, but got to a point where I realized this really wasn't gonna work. Like, love wasn't enough, basically. And I was madly in love with this guy. Like, I fell head over heels.
When you say love wasn't enough, is it like there were other circumstances in the way, you're in different countries, for example, and stuff like that? Or is it like love wasn't enough, the relationship wasn't working?
The relationship worked really smoothly.
Okay.
But the guy just I've never spoken about this on the recording before, so I want to be a bit, and I don't want to put the responsibility all on him. This is why I chose to leave. I contributed to the breakdown of the relationship as well, But from my perspective, the reason that I chose to leave was that I felt that he was a bit too immature, especially financially.
So an issue of ambition as well.
But it wasn't just ambition, it was self-destruction.
Okay.
It was, so there was a lack of ambition, but then there was also an element of self-destruction. It was like digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until there was like this void of death, basically. And it was just like, okay, this is
something you can't be a part of.
This is something that basically if I stay, I'm shooting myself in the foot big time. Mm-hmm. So it was a selfish decision. And at the time, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, and I got a lot of judgment for it. Like, oh, you're so materialistic and, like, how could you do that? And
because you were about to get married, right? As in, when did you call the wedding off?
I called it off in July and we were supposed to get married, I think a year later, June. So there was a year to go, but like everything was booked.
Already in full swing.
Like my wedding dress was ready, the church was booked. Everywhere was booked. Yeah. So it was a tough decision, but like it was one that I had to make.
And you don't regret today?
No. No, I still have love for him, like in the sense that he loved me and I loved him. Like there was no doubt, But our relationship was unhealthy in a way, like kind of.
Do you feel you were like destructive towards each other as well? As in, did you enable each other to be?
I think there was an element of enabling, like, and immaturity. We were young. We got engaged when I was 20.
Oh, okay.
So it was very much like, oh my God,
almost
we
like
met in this
rebellious love affair kind of thing.
It really was. And we met at uni and fell in love, head over heels, love at first sight. And, it was just one of these like the just mad loves.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned that people judged you for breaking things off. Must have been really hard to move away from a relationship of 6 years, especially when you've already taken that step to accept to get married. It
was hard, but in a way my body really let me know that I really needed to do it.
Yes, how?
Because I got like major anxiety attacks leading up to when I broke it off. And then when I broke it off, the anxiety went away.
Wow. You felt relieved.
Yes.
Yes. And then how did you meet your current husband?
So it's funny because you had Anne Dingley on, right? A few weeks ago. Anne used to work at an architecture firm here in Malta.
Okay.
And it was just before she went to London. She was leaving the job to move to London. And I heard about the job and, went interviewed for it and got the job.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you replaced that.
Yeah.
Both on my seat and on the...
Exactly.
At AP. Yeah.
So Anne, introduced me to that job and she's lovely and so sweet. Well, Pete was sitting on the other end of the, what's it called? The
open plan, I guess.
The open plan, yeah. And
so proper work relationship.
Well, it was funny, like, because he used to like walk in and I didn't know him. Like, I didn't know him before, but he always like really stood out to me. He was sort of very social, but kind of a loner at the same time. And anyway, we started talking and got to know each other, and there was definitely like a magnetic attraction. Cool. Yeah. I liked his work ethic. which was different from the last relationship.
Of course, that was an important thing for you, I imagine, coming out of the previous relationship. Mm-hmm. Was it difficult to manage a relationship at the office?
They were quite open to it, you know. It was the kind of office where lots of people fell in love.
Oh, wow, okay.
You know, it was a very social office, very fun. Okay. So in fact, it was a really good landing place for me because it was the first time, you know, I was back in Malta for like a significant period of time. And it's like I wasn't the kind of person to always keep in touch with people. So when I came back, it was almost not like starting from scratch because I still had my friends, but it was a little bit like starting from scratch. And plus I had broken up with my ex and lost a significant number of friends.
Yes, but you actually lost friends from that? As in because they were his friends?
They were his friends.
Or because people judged you that much?
Yeah, people did judge me. Oh. People did judge me like, oh, you left him because he's not like financially secure. No, he's not just not financially secure. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a pattern. It's a behavioral pattern, and it's
how like to go from calling off a wedding to getting married to someone else. Like, I wonder whether there was any insecurity or any indecisiveness from your end the second time round, or whether like that was just now full clarity, all this weight lifted.
No, it was very different. It was the second time round was very, very different. I felt I had gone through a lot of self-growth. Oh.
Okay, so that's our camera telling us we need to start again. So just for you to know, Emma is recording this session on camera as well for her YouTube channel. And now she's sitting back down again and continuing where we left off.
So in that time, I had done a lot of self-growth. I had started my master's in psychotherapy. And I learned a lot about myself in that process. And Pete also did his own self-growth. So our relationship, like this relationship was very different for me from my last relationship. Like my last one was very easy. We were very alike. We liked the same stuff. We always seemed to be on the same rhythm and energetically. I think we argued twice in the entire 6 years, I met Pete and it was like, no. Like kind of, like we would just sort of, we used to argue a lot. And we really had to learn how to communicate with each other because there was such a magnetic pull, but we were so different. Like we have certain fundamental values that we share. And I think that's why we work. But in terms of energetic rhythm, like music, whatever, anything, like kind of we're different in a lot of ways. Music is a silly one, but we're different in a lot of ways.
But yeah, you said it's a silly one, but I think it's one of these things. I think everyone who's in a relationship at some point or other, or even throughout the whole relationship, sort of is constantly questioning, or at some points questions, is this the right person for me? Am I ready to settle down with this person? Have I settled down with the right person or not? And I think sometimes even something as little as, our musical taste, what films we like to watch, what series we like to watch, I think those are things that do come into play when people are kind of questioning, is this my perfect match? And I guess that's my question for you and something that I'm sure the listeners will be interested in. It's sort of, when do you know? So you said that you fought a lot with you fight a lot with your current husband, and you kind of had to learn how to communicate and learn these sort of tools and strategies of being in a relationship properly. As a team. But I guess there's partly, you made the right choice, and then there's also you're making the right choices daily, right? So how do you know you've made the right choice in a partner?
I don't think you ever know.
Okay.
You could be with so many different people. I don't think there's like one person who's destined for you in this well.
As well, yeah.
You know, I think that you make a commitment, and you, not like you honor that commitment for good or for worse, because I don't see the point in staying if it becomes
problematic,
completely depleted, like. But you make a commitment to nourish your relationship, and you both do it. It can't be one person working, bringing the nourishment, and the other person treating the relationship like it's the last option on their list of priorities.
Yeah. So when did you realize, okay, Pete is the one for me?
You ask good questions, Chris. You're really
Already
making me think. When did I realize Pete was the one for me? I think it's when we, like 2 years into our relationship, we went through quite a turbulent time. I think it was when we got to the other side, because we grew so much in that time. It was like a time of such tension where it was like, should I stay? Should I go? I don't know. I might be making another mistake, That was a time of such tension, but we became so much closer, and we understood each other so much better. Like our relationship really deepened, and it felt like, okay, if we can get through this, through communicating and learning more tools and all this stuff, then okay, I think we'll be okay. It's not like,
because you kind of go through that test, right? And it's like you realize your partner is going to commit in this way, is committing to improving things, I imagine.
Yeah.
And I think when you go through, I think you kind of have to go through those sort of moments, right?
Definitely.
To feel
definitely
secure in your relationship, because you need to get out the other side, kind of thing.
And the thing is, like, you go through these moments with yourself, right? I mean, like Anne was speaking about, she went through 2 years of feeling like shit, like kind of, where have I gotten? Imagine 2 people navigating life together, having their own experiences.
Yeah.
And you have these expectations of what your relationship should be, and children or not children or whatever, like, it's complex. It's super complex. So of course there's going to be arguments, like, for me, arguments are healthy. It's just about, are you arguing to win, or are you arguing to understand each other?
Okay, so there I think we're getting into some of the more like useful and practical parts of this podcast, right? In the sense, like, what can couples do to improve things, right? So, okay, you've talked about going through a turbulent moment, and I guess that's something, big. But also there are all these like little things that couples go through, It's like you didn't clean the kitchen kind of thing, you left this in the bathroom, whatever. And I don't know, like what's a healthy approach to that kind of infighting? How do you...
To the little things?
Yeah,
or the bigger
daily,
things?
I think the day-to-day, it's like when you're constantly bickering with a partner, about these small things. And you spoke a bit about, whether you're arguing to win or arguing to
connect.
Yeah. What's involved? What kind of thinking is involved there? How do you go about it?
Well, with little things, I think that when you start arguing about little things, there's usually something bigger underneath. It's not actually about the little things, because in reality, when you feel safe in your relationship and you know that you're both on board, you're both working as a team, the little things, okay, might annoy you from time to time, but they're not such a big deal. Mm-hmm. The little things, like leaving the toilet seat up, not cleaning up, not removing your hair from the drain, blah, blah, blah. Those things like fill you with rage when you're angry about something else.
Okay.
And
so then how do you realize what you're angry about?
Well, my number one tip is go to sessions, right? Do some therapy coaching, like, do something to understand what's happening within yourself, because sometimes our emotions are complex and we don't know why we feel the way we do. Sometimes we don't even want to admit we feel the way we do. We say, no, I'm not angry, but
so it might not be anything wrong in your relationship. It just might be something wrong with you.
No, I wouldn't say that. We all bring our histories. So we all bring, our past relationships, our relationship with our parents, what we've learned about ourselves into our current relationships. So we project a lot onto our partners. So yes, there is definitely most always an element of personal responsibility on both sides of the partners. But a relationship is a dynamic. It's never one person's fault. And the moment it's seen like that, like this is your deal, you figure it out, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm. But when your partner does something that annoys you, for example, isn't it something they need to address? Like, do you address that together as a couple?
I think it depends on the situation, but yes, you do address it as a couple because you need to communicate about it, right? So, for example, you need to say, listen, when you do this, it's really not okay for me. It makes me feel as though you don't see me, you don't listen to me. I've told you this 700 times and you still haven't done anything about it, and it makes me feel insignificant. And I wonder, do you really love me? Do you really care? Do I matter to you? So that's the communication, right? That's me owning how I feel.
And that's not easy for a lot of people, right? Communication, as in, I don't know, I see myself, I find it so difficult to be like really direct, frank and direct, in all sorts of relationships. Like how deliberate and conscious does one's communication need to become? Because I feel like some people are naturally very communicative, naturally very direct in the way they speak. Others much less so. How do you achieve better communication?
Well, if communicating doesn't come naturally to you, in the sense of communicating directly, it's really important that you take the time to understand yourself first, because it's going to be much easier to communicate. Like if I need to tell you something, it's going to be much easier for me to have you understand me if I understand me. If I don't understand what I'm trying to say and I come to you with all these unprocessed emotions, I'm just shouting at you and experiencing panic attacks, you're not going to know what to do with it. And you're not going to meet my need. Mm-hmm. So I need to do that work first. I need to do that processing and go, okay, what is this anger about? Mm-hmm. What is this anxiety? Like, how come I'm not feeling safe in the relationship? Like, what's happening here? And then once I understand it, then I can come to you and I can say, listen, when you do this or when you don't do this, I feel this. And this is how it's affecting me, and this is how it's affecting my presence in the relationship. But then what's super important is the holding, right, from the partner.
The holding? In
the sense of the partner needs to come, because very often what the partner will do, and this is all of us will go, no, it's not true, I don't do that, as if
I was just going to say, when the way you were explaining yourself, it sounded very idealistic, but in reality, in a sort of argumentative sort of relationship setting, it doesn't work out like that. You start to explain, and then there's like that defensiveness, and then you become defensive, and then, it tends to spiral in that sense.
The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. 100%.
To get it to the state that you were referring to. Okay.
That doesn't mean you're always going to do it like that. Yeah. There are going to be times where you're just like, fuck off! You just lose it. But you can come back to that. You can repair it. And that's the thing about relationships. It's not about doing them perfect. It's not about doing them, 100% right. The most important elements of relationships are safety, okay? Knowing that I have your back, you have my back, okay? No matter what, you come first. And reparation.
Meaning?
So love goes beyond conflict. Like there's going to be conflict. We're two people, you know, like with different wants, different needs, different expectations, different ambitions, you know. So yeah, we're gonna fight. You know, it's normal. We're gonna argue. What's important is to repair. It's to come back and say, I'm sorry.
And that's where the commitment comes in, right? It's like when you've, like you said, you know, you're with the right person when you've committed and they've committed.
Yeah.
And that's where I guess the fight for survival or the fight to go back and repair things comes in.
Exactly. That you don't give up, right? It's always about nourishing the bond. And obviously if you're going to say you're sorry, like mean it. Yeah. and change the behavior, right? Or if you don't know how to change the behavior, then you seek guidance to change it.
I guess there's loads of relationships which start in that way as well, you know, where there is safety, there is this commitment to reparation, but then something goes really wrong along the way. I've seen that you've spoken on some of your YouTube videos as well about cheating, for example.
Yeah.
Like from your experience dealing with your own relationships and the relationships of other people as well, how survivable is something like that in a relationship? You know, when you breach your partner's trust, for example, how do you get back to having that safe space or that reparative space? Or is it, you know, or would you guide people to kind of move on from those sort of relationships because they're so difficult to get back to that level of trust again?
I don't work with couples at the moment, so I work with people individually. I do work with them on their relationships, but I don't do the couple work. So I don't do that much. But lots of people have overcome betrayal. And by overcome, I mean found each other again. With cheating, very often it's a matter of the person who's cheating experiencing a lot of dissatisfaction within themselves. There's this need for growth, but they're not sure how to grow. They're not sure how they need to grow. And they start looking for themselves. People who cheat are typically looking for themselves inside somebody else. You know, okay. In fact, we usually get crushes on people who we admire in some way. Like they have an element, they have a quality that we want
in ourselves.
Ourselves. So we sort of experience ourselves through them. You know, if you can think of the first year of love as being extremely selfish and narcissistic because we're really just falling in love with ourselves, what we project in the other, kind of thing. This yes can be repaired. It's not like you're doomed and this will never be repaired. It can totally be repaired, but like one of the most important elements is that the person who did the cheating needs to own responsibility. 100%. I mean, relationships cannot function without people owning responsibility. The most like damaging relationships are the ones where people don't own responsibility. They blame everybody else for what's not going right. You lose trust like that. You know, nobody respects you. Nobody wants to be around you. You know.
When do we often find ourselves in a situation where we don't realize we need to own our responsibility? Like how do we get to that? Like I guess it's a very introspective thing, right? When you do something in a relationship and you know that you've done something wrong, like, you know, we're talking about the minor issues, the major issues, you kind of can take responsibility in some cases, I guess. And then there are cases where you don't really, you know, where you're still projecting off that responsibility.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know, like how does one become more self-aware about their involvement in a relationship, you know, what they're giving and getting from a relationship? What kind of tools do you use to assess your own sort of relationship performance?
Like me, myself.
Yeah, and what would you recommend?
Well, I engage in self-growth.
Okay.
Always. So therapy or coaching individually for myself, so that I'm always understanding, one, because I'm constantly growing and changing, and I'm constantly needing to integrate what's happening, what I'm learning, let go of stuff that no longer serves me, that might be holding me back when I want to move forward. And the thing is, when you engage in this relationship with yourself, when you have a healthy relationship with yourself, and you love yourself, you value yourself, then you can bring your best self to your relationship, because you're taking care of yourself, and it doesn't become something where you need the other person to fill you up, so then the other person can't be the way they are because that makes you insecure, or the other person can't be the way they are because that sends you into a funk kind of thing. That's too manipulative. It's too, there needs to be this acknowledgement that we're two separate people, and like I have a responsibility. Like I have a responsibility to know myself.
And to be the best version of myself as well, I guess, right?
To be the best. Sometimes I like your enthusiasm, but kind of sometimes I feel when we say the best version of ourselves, it's almost like, like slamming it, like, kind of slamming it, crushing it. I think it's about being the most compassionate version of ourselves, because love is compassion. Mm-hmm. Love is passion with passion, compassion. So it's, I feel with you. Yeah. And to love, you need to be able to feel with the other person, because if we meet each other with, they tell you how they feel, and you're like, no, I never did that. Like, that's not me. I wouldn't do that. Like, okay, maybe you didn't mean to do that, but that's how they feel. Mm-hmm. So bracket that for a second, put that to the side, and center and sync up and go, okay, I see what I did, and I see how you feel, and I love you, That doesn't mean you own all the responsibility and then everything is your fault. Your partner will own responsibility too, that's important. But there needs to be the sharing.
I like what you said about sort of like it kind of starts with you, right? As in, you've got to be comfortable in your own skin. You've got to be comfortable with yourself, with your life, and if you're struggling with a lot of that, then you're going to be projecting that into a relationship.
100%.
Right? So I guess to be in a relationship in a sort of fruitful way, you've got to have started with yourself, and ideally so has your partner. Because otherwise otherwise it becomes a struggle anyway. Yeah. And I guess you've got to continue working on yourself, right? Because that's a constant step. Constant process.
You can take short breaks every so often, but then it's going to creep up on you, you have to work again.
And I guess therapy is one way of doing that.
Yeah.
But there's also other things, right? We were talking in the previous podcast as well, or one of the previous podcasts with Alex Kurmi about mindfulness, meditation, and just introspection, and just really kind of channeling through your thoughts and understanding where you're kind of coming from and why. And
mindfulness is a good tool, a very good tool. I like it in combination with therapy. I practice mindfulness meditation. I've done so for about 7 years.
Wow.
And I found it's made a big difference. It's very good for understanding yourself. But sometimes it's good to have like a mentor who's going to challenge you on your bullshit. Because we all have bullshit, right? And we will make excuses for ourselves.
Do you think it's something that people should just work into their daily lives, therapy as a constant, as opposed to therapy when there's trauma or some big event happening to them?
Ideally, yes. For sure.
As in, if you could afford it, if you could...
Well, look, the way I see it is it's an investment. kind of, it's the same way that you can either choose to eat junk food or you can choose to eat well. And then, in 40 years, either pay a massive medical expense or, kind of be relatively well.
Yeah.
So yeah, a matter of affording it. Like, I don't think anybody goes, yeah, I'd love to like spend all this money on it, but it's an investment and it's going to make a massive difference in the way you feel about yourself, your relationships. And you know what? The way you feel about yourself makes a massive difference in your ability to earn money.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if you see a difference between the number of people who come to you, whether they're men or women. Like, I wonder if men find it harder to go to therapy and to.
I have quite a few male clients,
yeah?
kick-ass male clients. Really cool. Really
and do
cool.
you see differences over there between the genders in terms of the kind of problems that we encounter, the kind of communication issues we encounter and things like that? Or we spoke with Anne Dingley about ambition at a point, I'm not sure if it was on air or off air, but it was, this feeling of are women brought up to be as ambitious and as goal-setting as men in that sense?
Ambition, I haven't really noticed a difference. Like, I have quite ambitious male clients and female clients. One of the differences that I do notice is that men tend to not...
There we go. We've got to... Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, no, now I need to do this.
The camera went again.
Sorry.
Okay.
The men tend to not know much about emotions.
Okay,
like they know about them concept-wise, but they don't know that they feel emotions in their body, like, as in they're not so aware. They don't know what their bodies are telling them. Women will sit down and kind of tell me, I'm pissed off, or I'm sad, or not all. Some will be a bit out of touch as well, but they have more emotional vocabulary.
They're more used to talking through their emotions as well, and more comfortable with them.
Yeah.
I wonder as well, a lot of our listeners are sort of millennials, dealing with the realities that millennials deal with, like living in a very ultra-connected society, and one where we're constantly comparing ourselves to our peers. There's that social media element that brings it really to the fore, and makes us very conscious of what we're achieving and not achieving. It's very hard to stop being at work. I was reading something recently about the right to be disconnected. I think it's like something to do with employers, letting you switch off and not firing you because you don't answer an email or a phone call out of office hours. Burnout, this kind of burnout that a lot of people might be facing today. How do you know when you've reached that point of crisis, of I need to do something about this is getting too much?
You feel it. Ideally, you don't get to that point of crisis because that's going to take a really long time to heal. But you feel it in your ability to focus. Like, you won't be focused. There'll be like brain fog. You'll be procrastinating. You'll feel like even little tasks are overwhelming, and you'll have a lot of tension and even pain in your body, maybe symptoms like IBS, inflammation, because the whole body basically, when you're hurtling towards burnout, is in fight or flight. It's not the same as trauma, but it's similar on a physiological level, because essentially you are not giving your body time to repair and recover. So you're constantly in go mode. And if you're constantly in go mode, like the sense of urgency, because it's not just you're in go mode and you're performing, like that sounds amazing. That's fun, like I like go mode. It's about urgency. It's that it has to be mega awesome and it has to happen now. Right?
And you're already late. And
you're already late, right? Yeah. You have to be mega rich and you have to have your body looking slamming and you have to have a kick-ass job. You need to be happy with it. You need to go, better, faster now. when there's that sense of urgency, your body, your brain goes into fight or flight, you know? So this is what I'm saying, like kind of the clients who are like, go, 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 and they don't know how to relax. Like they're the ones who tend to be more on the, like, they could burn out. I am one of these people. Like I
Have you
am.
experienced burnout before?
Oh God, yes. Yeah. You know, and sometimes I feel myself, I'm like, oh, I'm almost there. Okay, like kind of it's time to come back. Like, but I don't let myself get to the points that I've done in the past, you know, before I understood what was happening, you know.
But so you start to feel, because I'm sure everyone has either experienced this or is experiencing this themselves, or has a colleague or an employee or an employer or whatever, you know, who they can sense something is, you know, not quite right with at the moment. And we throw words like anxiety and stress and panic attack, we throw them around very frequently nowadays, right? And it almost feels like everyone suffers from anxiety and everyone suffers from burnout and stress. Like, I guess, how do you kind of make a distinction, you know, between, how do you know how bad it's getting and how serious it is? Or are you making a fuss, you know, or is your...
The way I see it, Chris, is like you never need to get to a serious point to listen to your body. Everyone experiences anxiety. It's a completely normal human experience, you know, and anxiety lets you know you don't feel supported to move forward. You have energy and you want to move forward. So you want to progress in your relationship or in your career or whatever, but you don't feel supported. There are either limiting beliefs or environmental factors, cultural factors, and that's fine. You know, it's just about decoding the anxiety. So having somebody who understands anxiety and can walk you through the process to decode it, to understand what you want, what support do you need, what is the limiting belief that's holding you back? Let's decode it. Let's replace it with an empowering belief so you can move forward. Let's do the healing, you know? So anxiety is a 100% normal human experience. If you have anxiety, you are not sick. If you experience it on a daily basis, what's happening is that anxiety has become a habitual response, and you need guidance to train your brain to no longer go to anxiety for every as you know, for every need.
Okay.
You know, it's just about bringing the safety back to your body, you know.
Mm-hmm. And so do you feel there are ways of being, you know, super high performance mode, you know, because one of the things that you train in is performance, no, goal setting, like being I guess we weren't too fond of being the best version of yourself, but you know what I mean, like kind of achievement.
Yes, exactly.
As a word that you use.
Yes, do the science of achievement.
Yeah, like there is a tension there, no, between trying your best to achieve and going too far, or pushing your boundaries to the point that you start to feel it even physiologically and mentally.
Yes.
And yet we kind of all want to achieve. Eh? How do we? Is it a question of kind of toning down the sort of how much we want to achieve, how soon? Is it just a question of pacing ourselves, like you said, a question of urgency as opposed to...
Yeah, pacing yourself is important. Mm-hmm. You know, this sort of social comparison, like I should be further along, it's gonna hurt you, like, you know, and learning to enjoy the journey, learning to see your achievements, to acknowledge them, you know, to celebrate. Mm-hmm. You need to celebrate life, because at the end of the day, if you have, you know, big dreams, keep them. Love them, make a difference in this world, like go for it. I love it, you know, keep your big dreams. But the journey towards it needs to be pleasurable, because if the journey becomes painful because you don't allow yourself to rest, you don't allow yourself to see what you've achieved, you don't allow yourself to enjoy, your body's going to start resenting you. Your mind's going to start resenting the process because it sucks, because it's never enough. No matter what you do, it's never enough. And whenever we tell ourselves that we are never enough, boom, that fight or flight just goes, nah, because it's freaking out, you know?
I think a lot of these issues come into play as well with our own body images, right? You mentioned you battled with anorexia when you were just 13 or 14. And I mean, that's something that I've struggled with a lot in my own life, you know, my sort of acceptance of my body as it is, and also my acceptance of wanting to change that and learning how to do that in a healthy way. What would you say, like what you've said now about pacing yourself, about the sense of urgency, about the sense of enjoying life and enjoying the journey? How do you relate it to body issues and body image issues?
Good question. I feel like, well, it's with situations like anorexia and stuff like that, there's usually trauma. So that needs to be healed first. With regards to like wanting a better body, like kind of wanting to be healthier, fitter, it's very important that your approach is one of love. You know, if it's one of punishment, you're going to self-sabotage in the end. It's not going to be any fun, you know? Like why do you want a fitter body? Like, if it's just to fit into a size 6 bikini, it's not really much motivation, right? But if you want it if you want to be healthier and fitter because you'll have more energy to play with your kids, and, you know, you'll be more focused because when we exercise, we integrate more, and, you know, we have more mental clarity. So you'll perform better at your job. You know, if you have those kinds of reasons, you'll sleep better, you'll feel better about yourself, so then you'll want to have sex more, which will be good for your relationship. If you have those kinds of things, then yeah, go for it, you know, and that will fuel you, you know, to create a lifestyle that involves movement and, you know, but in a way that serves you. When it's about, I'm not enough, like, no matter what we do in life, whether it's creating a business or wanting a better body or wanting a healthy relationship, whenever we enter it from the space of lack, you know, of not enough, which is this shame, we create what we don't want, you know?
We make life so much harder, like, as well. I think there's that famous poem by Bukowski about sort of, if it's not sort of roaring out of you, don't do it, you know, because it's really got, you know, you shouldn't be doing things just because you want to please that person or get into more people's beds, or, you know, like it's got to be something that's really it pulls you, it pulls you forward, like. And it's like, I guess that takes us back to relationships and satisfaction at work and all of those things. I like to end these podcasts by asking the guests to ask me a question.
I know you do this.
to wherever it goes, so feel free.
My question.
Yeah,
okay, I thought you would have somebody writing in with a question.
So this is the chance where I put you on the spot, or to put me on the spot.
Okay, so, I'm excited about it. I want to pick a good question.
All right, we'll give you the time to think.
Well, my curiosity about you, I have lots of curiosity about you. I'd love to have dinner with you one day and ask you lots of questions.
I feel like that will happen now.
But maybe it's loving Malta. Like, where did that come from?
Okay. As in, like, where did it all start? How did it...
Like your desire, your passion, like, because that's a big deal. You created a big thing. That took a lot of energy.
Yes, it did. I think I had sort of two professional experiences that took me to that direction. The first was, my first job, I was a journalist at the Times, and I was like age 20 to 25, did 5 years there, learned from so many amazing journalists and editors at the time, and I really developed this absolute love for journalism. And I rose up the ranks quite quickly, but also I realized that, I was quite young, and there was also a bit of a ceiling in that kind of organization, where people are, they spend their entire lives working there, so there aren't a lot of opportunities further up the ladder, so to speak. So,
sure.
And also I think I became a journalist at a time, it was like between 2008 and 2013. And in that time, that's when we got the iPhone. That's when we got our Facebook feeds to be much more, advanced than they were before. That's when everything went online. And I experienced that from the point of view of a journalist who was writing articles that I really believed in, and I saw the difference in response. So in the beginning, in the sort of 2008 part of things, people would give you feedback about an article that appeared on the front page of the Times.
Okay.
Towards 2013, no one would realize there was a story on the front page of the Times unless it was online.
Okay.
And particularly my friends, my contemporaries, people my age, just weren't reading that, and were reading other things like BuzzFeed and other kind of content that was more neatly designed for the Facebook feed. So I was like, okay, this is a bit of a dying business, I've sort of reached a bit of a ceiling here professionally as well. I need to get out of this and start thinking about something else.
You wanted to grow.
Yeah, I wanted to grow, and I was quite financially driven as well.
Yeah.
Because I had performed quite well at an early age, even financially. It sort of always unlocks other levels, and you say, okay, who knows? Maybe I can do something. If I
reach this, I can reach that, right?
So I said, why don't I do what a lot of other people did before me, which is take everything I've learned in journalism and move into the PR business, where you're kind of wearing a different hat. You're applying a lot of the same skills, but for a client instead of for the general public, the reader.
Okay.
So you're still asking questions, you're still telling stories, you're still communicating as effectively as you can, but your point of view is to defend or to be on the side of your client, a brand, a company, a person. And I kind of saw myself as a kind of defense lawyer in the court of public opinion.
Okay.
And I liked that. I thought, companies deserved it. And I saw there was a demand for it, because when I was a journalist, they were so bad at companies were so bad at expressing themselves or dealing with difficult questions or difficult journalists or difficult crises. And I saw an opportunity in helping them communicate and be the best versions of themselves.
That's
and I like
really
that.
Cool.
I enjoyed it a real lot. I did a couple of years of that. But a lot of what happens in the PR world is that besides the really fun sort of Olivia Popey, whoever follows Scandal, like a kind of like crisis management and reputation management, which is really fun. There's also a lot of companies coming to you and saying, can you get this in the papers? And it's like, okay, I can pass on this press release to a paper and hope that they print it, but you're giving me money, not them, and there was a point when I realized I was getting paid a lot of money to kind of negotiate with the papers, to get something printed, but there was no incentive for the papers.
Yes.
And I said, okay, this is
it's not working.
A really good opportunity.
Oh, okay, yeah.
As in, I said, okay, so this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I am this middleman, but like the newspapers really desperately need money. Mm-hmm. The client really desperately wants to be on them.
Yeah.
Why don't we change this relationship? But the newspapers weren't ready to do that. The newspapers were very precious about what is PR and what is news and what
they were
is
used to
advertising.
doing
They were
things
used to
the
their
way,
own model. So I saw then this like opportunity. I said, okay, so we need better content that engages younger people.
Yes,
and
definitely.
journalists need to have platforms where their stories are actually engaging, you know. The problem is, how do you pay for that? But wait a second, there are all these companies dying to pay for that as long as you give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
So and this wasn't groundbreaking. This was what's happening with content and news around the world. So I said, okay, I'll start a platform that allows for these things to happen. You know, I'll start a platform for young people that does journalism, that does content, even like from a wider perspective, you know, and provides that commercial offering to sponsors.
That's super cool.
Yeah. At the time, I was also doing PR for a big NGO based in Malta, and Love in Dublin contacted me for my client.
Okay.
I go on this site, Love in Dublin. I'm like, fuck, this is exactly the site I want to have. You know, I was actually talking with a friend, someone who was going to start it with me in the beginning, actually, and we were brainstorming names, and it was like, oh, maybe we'll do it Loving Malta, or Malta Loving, or Malta Love, or whatever.
Wow.
So when I saw this like Love in Dublin, I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is just what I want. And it was a good decision as well, because it allowed me to take the website and the branding and not start from scratch, and just do what I felt I knew I could do very well, which was write good content and sell it to clients who I had been dealing with for a few years before that. So that's my big, long story about how it all set up.
That's really cool.
That answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It's really cool. Very, very cool. And nice to know. Nice to know the story. And I think you're doing a really good job.
Thank you. You too.
Mean,
I mean, I think it's really nice to congrats for putting yourself out there, because I think there's one thing that I've seen is quite a struggle in Malta. It's getting people to be comfortable even just in front of a camera. I know I'm not super comfortable in front of a camera myself.
It takes time.
It takes a while. But it's really nice to put yourself out there and to just give people these conversations, these things to think about, because we're all, I think, craving it. You know, we're all craving a bit of depth and a bit of insights that we can't just generate alone, you know. Not everyone affords a good therapy session every other week, so this is like, and I think you're helping them.
And I think authenticity as well, which is what you're bringing through your podcast. You know, it's really nice.
Thank you very, very much.
And you make me want to read the news with Love in Malta, which is
amazing. Hopefully it's not all bad news. So I've been Chris Peregin with Emma Hogg, and this has been Good Faith. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, give it a 5-star rating, and tell your friends all about it. Until next time.